What's up? I'm SYROBE, and I've streamed over 35 of the last 48 hours on Twitch since Path of Exile 2 released. So this is going to be a raw build video with very minimal editing. I'll be covering my full monk build for Acts 1, 2, and 3. If you followed my first video for the Act 1 monk leveling build or came over from Twitch, you would know that the build in Act 1 was only for Act 1. Now we need to evolve it because what we had in Act 1 ain't gonna cut it for Act 2 or 3. In Act 1, my build focused on farming power charges with Killing Palm and then using power charges with Falling Thunder with the Perpetual Charge support gem so that we can cast the max empowered Falling Thunder version multiple times. However, this build was only meant for leveling in Act 1 and had some issues with boss killing, especially towards the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2, because at a lower level you can only gain power charges by executing enemies. So in a boss fight, it's a lot harder to get charges without minions to farm power charges off of. No charges meant no damage. So here's a quick recap for what you should have if you're struggling in Act 1 and for the start of Act 2. These will be your main skill gems: Falling Thunder, Killing Palm, Tempest Bell, you should already have. In addition, you should now include Glacial Cascade, Frozen Locust, and Tempest Flurry. You basically want to use Tempest Flurry as your main basic attack. I stopped using the regular quarterstaff attacks to use this instead. It does consume mana on each hit, but you should kill most things before you run into mana issues at this stage. You basically just spam Tempest Flurry and the Tempest Bell together, rinsing and repeating. And if you need range, that's why you have Glacial Cascade. Basically, this skill does really shit damage unless you hit an enemy with the tip of it. When you hit that tip sweet spot, you deal more than double the original damage of Glacial Cascade. So get comfortable kiting backwards while casting so you can always hit enemies in the face with your tip. Using Tempest Flurry to smack your bells and Glacial Cascade in addition to the Falling Thunder empowered charges should be good enough improvements to the Act 1 build until you progress further into Act 2, and for the beginning of Act 2 until you progress further in Act 2 to get a level 7 skill gem. Don't worry about support gems for now, you need a level 7 skill gem. It is essential that you get one so you can get a huge spike in your damage to carry you through the rest of Act 2 with Storm Wave, since Storm Wave is a level 7 skill. I believe you should get your first level 7 skill gem after finishing the first boss fight versus Jamonra the Risen King. After this fight, our path is blocked by a sandstorm, so we have to go back to the ship and talk to Zarka. They should give you your first level 7 skill gem. I'm unsure if you can get one earlier than this, but this is a guaranteed level 7 skill gem, which becomes a massive power spike for you following my pure monk build. This is all you need to do for the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2. Once you get that level 7 gem in Act 2, we're gonna update the build again. Storm Wave is basically just a stronger, more OP version of Glacial Cascade. You also don't need to just use the tip, you can use any part of it. Here's an update for what your build should look like for both skill gems and support gems once you start getting more level 7 skill gems later in Act 2. Storm Wave is your primary damage output. Spam it to win. For support gems, use Lightning Infusion for more damage and Concentrated Effect for even more damage. These two support gems allow you to get a ton of damage out of each individual cast of Storm Wave. Storm Wave plus Tempest Flurry and Bell should be your main sources of damage for all of Act 2. Use this to smack enemies, then drop a bell on them and continue smacking enemies with the bell. For support gems, use Martial Tempo for more attack speed since you attack insanely fast with Tempest Flurry anyways, and the Final Strike does a ton of AoE damage. Then for the other support gem, use your Crescendo so your final hit in the Flurry casts twice for double the AoE damage. Now here's where things get a little tricky. Let's talk about Spirit Gems. If you have a level 1 Spirit Gem, please make sure you get Lightning Herald. This is not the same as a skill gem. Lightning Herald comes from Spirit Gems, which are completely separate. Lightning Herald will make your wave clear insane. Lightning Herald can be obtained in Act 1 if you missed it. It uses Spirit instead of mana. To get a perma plus 30 Spirit, you need to go back to Chapter 1 and do the quest to kill the King in the Mists inside the Freythorn location. Killing him rewards you an item that when consumed grants you plus 30 Spirit permanently, so you can keep Lightning Herald active at all times. If you're still struggling with damage towards the end of Act 2, go to your spell tab and get the Conductivity spell. You can use spells with any weapons. This allows us to absolutely melt bosses and should hopefully carry you throughout Act 2 like it did for me. If you are still struggling at this point, please consider looking for a better quarterstaff weapon. All of your skill gems, like Tempest Flurry and even Storm Wave, are considered attacks, not spells, and are tied to your attack stat from your weapon, which as a monk should always be a quarterstaff. These attacks are not spells once again, so if your DPS still isn't good by this point, you probably have a really shit quarterstaff. Grinding Gear needs to fix these fucking drop rates. I swear it's abysmal. Now for Act 3. It's fairly simple. Again, a large portion of your damage involves getting a stronger quarterstaff. Once you get into Act 3, you should start seeing a lot of level 9 and level 10 skill gems. By this point, you should no longer be using Falling Thunder, Killing Palm, Glacial Cascade, Herald of Thunder, or Frozen Locust. In my opinion, these all become obsolete by Act 3. To evolve this build even further, you'll need several level 9 gems or above. These can be found in the very first area of Act 3. You'll just have to grind some mobs a bit for them to drop. The first one you should make with it is Charge Staff. Before, we used Falling Thunder to consume our power charges. Now Charge Staff skill will consume all your power charges. And for each charge consumed, adds bonus lightning damage to all our attacks and adds extra lightning waves, Moonveil style, to both Storm Wave and Tempest Flurry, and pretty much anything else that's considered an attack. You can make any changes you want to my build, but these are my favorite skill gems that carried me through Act 3. Tempest Flurry will be your new basic attack. For support gems, use Martial Tempo for attack speed and Crescendo for a bonus finisher / double AoE damage. For Tempest spell support gems, use Persistence to cost less mana and Ruthless to stun more. Now for Storm Wave, which should be your main source of DPS on top of Tempest Flurry. Use Lightning Pen for more damage, Conduction to trigger Cast on Shock. This is very, very important. You need this one. And then Concentrated Effect for even more bonus damage. For Siphoning Strike, you want Perfusion, which gives you a chance to double the power charges you gain from Siphoning Strike. Using your skill gem, go to the Occult tab and pick up Profane Ritual. This consumes corpses to give you a guaranteed power charge. For support gems, use Arcane Tempo for faster casting speed and Corpse Conversion for a chance to not consume a corpse but still gain a power charge, potentially giving you multiple power charges from a single corpse. Charge Staff buffs all of our melee skills. For support gems, slot in Perpetual Charge for a chance to not consume power charges but keeps the effects of them, and then Inspiration so that when you consume your power charges, it costs less mana. And personally, I really fucking love Frostwall. It's actually so strong. Using a level 9 skill gem, go into your Elemental tab and pick up Frostwall. And lastly, make sure you get 2 final spells, Conductivity and Voltaic Mark. I'll explain what to do with them after this next step. Now, these other 2 things you need come from Spirit Gems. Do not confuse Spirit Gems with Skill Gems. Spirit Gems are completely separate. You'll need another level 1 Spirit Gem for Mana Remnants, and a level 2 Spirit Gem for Cast on Shock. You can get level 2 Spirit Gems in Act 3. I don't believe you can get any sooner than that. Now, put Cast on Shock inside your Skill Gem slot. Then, inside of Cast on Shock, you're going to put both of those spells that you created earlier, Conductivity and Voltaic Mark, go inside this. This is what's known as a meta skill. It can get very complex. So to simplify it, your lightning skills, like Storm Wave, can apply a shocking debuff. When you apply that shocking debuff enough times, like around 7 times for example, your Cast on Shock will automatically cast any spells that you put inside of it. This will trigger both of those spell debuffs that you put inside it and activate them on enemies without using their mana costs. Once the spell triggers from you shocking enemies, it will cast on top of whatever enemy triggered it. This means it will automatically cast both debuff spells where they stand, which both of those spells will reduce your target's lightning resist and crank up your damage to the max. As for the other Spirit Gem skill, Mana Remnant will activate whenever you critically strike a shocked enemy. When that happens, these blue orbs will drop, and if you pick them up, they restore a ton of mana. Remember, these are Spirit Gems, so they both require Spirit to activate their buffs, and you'll need to have at least 90 Spirit for my build, so that you can use both Mana Remnant and Cast on Shock together. To get more Spirit, use Armor, Rings, or Amulets, anything that gives you additional Spirit. You can gain 30 Perma Spirit from killing the Herald of the Mist in Act 1, and another 30 Perma Spirit from the Bog Witch in Act 3, but that's still not enough. You'll need to get at least another 30 Spirit from your gear, like how my amulet here gives me plus 32 Spirit. The reason you need this much Spirit is so you can manually toggle on your Mana Remnants, which costs 30 Spirit, and manually toggle on your Cast on Shock, which costs 60 Spirit. You'll have to right-click their icons to know they're active, and they won't activate if you don't have enough Spirit. Be sure to follow me on Twitch. I am live every day streaming Path of Exile 2 and my Monk build, and I'm grinding for Twitch partner. Thank you all so much because the Twitch streams have been massive lately. Now, let's wrap this up with the passive skill tree and a little combat guide after. For your character stats, you need at least 83 int and 52 dex to use all of those skill gems I just mentioned. You can see yours here in your character character screen. For the actual passive skill tree, I took nodes for attack damage, lightning damage, power charges, critical strike chance, and critical strike damage. All of the little skill point nodes went to dex and int, whatever you need more of to meet the 83 int and 52 dex requirement. For your Ascendancy, if you have completed Ascendancy trials, you'll either have to select the invoker or the chalupa. Personally, it doesn't matter, but start off with invoker like this if you've been struggling, and if you want a little bit more of a challenge, select the acolyte of Chayula instead, and start with these two skills. These will be the best use of your Ascendancy points either way. For new players, I recommend invoker, but for my build, I actually chose the acolyte of Chalupa because no one else was testing it, so I'm taking one for the team. Lastly, here's how you should use my build with a combat guide. Again, if you found this helpful, come over to my Twitch for more instant responses and feedback. I'll leave the link in the description below. For combat, you need to spam your storm waves to primarily kill enemies. I prefer this over Tempest Flurry since it's safer than melee due to its range, and because I would rather put a toothpick under my toenail and kick a fucking wall instead of playing a close range melee build without a shield. Seriously, it fucking blows late game. So I mainly use Tempest Flurry to activate my Tempest spells, and then for my primary damage, I'll use Storm Wave while kiting backwards to keep a safe distance from enemies. Now, once you kill enough enemies, you'll have some corpses to use Profane Ritual on to gain guaranteed power charges. If you don't have any corpses, like against a boss or elite, apply the shock debuff to them with Storm of Waves like normal, but this time use Siphon Strike to consume the debuff on them and gain a power charge instead. Then, once you have enough, activate Charge Staff to consume all your power charges, and grant all your attacks lightning shockwaves that deal bonus damage and grants you extra lightning range attack buffs. Remember, consuming more power charges adds more stacks for more damage, and if you're at max stacks, it'll refresh the buff timer slightly. Frost Wall is your oh shit button. You can cast it to block enemies away from you, and it can also block some projectiles from enemies. Enemies will focus this wall until they break it. It basically taunts them to attack it instead of you. You can also break it yourself. And when it gets broken either way, it will slow and eventually freeze enemies, while also dealing AoE damage. That'll be the end of my Ultimate Lightning Monk guide. If you enjoyed, be sure to follow me on Twitch, and once I get more Ascendancy points, I'll make a full Ascendancy build later. I've been SYROBE, and hopefully, I'll see you on Twitch. Peace.